Welcome to Lifting Leaders Podcast, where we are unleashing leader possibilities to make a better world. I'm Crystal Roberts, and together with Trisha Ryan, we're diving deeper into some of the complexities of the world's most critical challenges and exploring innovative ways of navigating through them.
Through interviews with experts and leaders just like you, we're exploring what it takes to thrive as a leader today and examining new ways of thinking about how to creatively lead into a more equitable, socially responsible, and sustainable future. And the future starts now.
Hi, Trisha. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, although I am getting a little tired of summer not quite being here yet. How are you?
You mean the hail?
I don't even want to talk about it. I could just say that my weeds are just loving this weather right now.
That's right. It's good for the weeds. Yes. And is that connected? I don't know, to our natural plants that we're trying to grow for
I
the
have
birds,
yet to see a
bees.
bee, bird, or butterfly go onto any of my weeds, but I'm sure they must at night because they're thriving.
Yes, yes. Well, I'm excited about today's episode, and
It'll be fun.
feels really urgent to me, the topic.
Yes. Oh, boy, does it ever.
Yeah.
You know, this is an interesting time we're in, and I hope that our listeners are able to see the value in this as well. I think it's going to be very interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
Excited.
This topic of belonging, it's just really a key, I think, for us as we think about making a better world.
More now than ever before, I think.
Yeah, yeah. In this time of uncertainty, there's a lot of disconnection, and it really seems to be, sadly, at a really all-time high. And it impacts all kinds of things. And we know that leaders have a really important role in organizations for helping to create these cultures, these environments for belonging.
And, you know, I have to say real quick, because I had a pretty intense week at work, and this is part of the reason. You know, I think people are searching for it. They are longing for it, but they're not necessarily finding it because they're not exactly sure maybe what to look at or look for or who to turn to. And, you know, I can help to a point, but honestly, I think that these folks need to, you know, take some time. And I think today we'll find out some ways in which our listeners can maybe tap into this a little bit more.
Yeah, for sure. And we know that it fuels things like engagement, performance, innovation, well-being. It just touches so much of our lives. And so our guest today brings his deep insight into this essential conversation. He's going to be sharing practical strategies and powerful stories about what it takes to build a culture where everyone feels that they can belong. And I feel like sometimes when I talk to leaders in my coaching, they don't even know where to start. Mm-hmm. You know, it feels almost hopeless. So whether you're leading a small team or a global organization, this conversation will give you tools and inspiration to make belonging a lived reality. It's something that we can achieve. It's possible.
Yeah.
And so a little bit more about our guest, Paul Haury. So Paul guides people to experience belonging in self-belonging, in their own brilliance, and within their company tribes to really live and perform better than they ever imagined. And in service of that, he's a coach, a mentor, an optimist, and he does his best to be a learn-it-all, which I love, for what motivates people and how they can belong. Yes. So he's been a coach and a consultant for executives, leadership, and teams, a global VP of people and culture, an IT director, a construction and tech entrepreneur, teacher, building maintenance mechanic, child development counselor, marine mechanic, and a McDonald's employee.
There you go. Do you know how to make marshmallows? Just kidding.
Yeah. So done it all.
Wow.
So over the years of education and work, he's had the wonderful fortune of people sharing their incredible hearts and skills with him. From them, he's developed abilities in the following areas and where he hopes to help others: coaching, executive leadership, strategic story, people operations, corporate culture, employee engagement, leadership development, international HR, social, psychological, and neurosciences, agile, lean, TQM, 4DX, and teaching.
Wow.
Yeah. So a wide background for a wide application to a lot of different services.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I love that. And so I'm really excited to dive into this conversation about belonging with Paul. Welcome, Paul. Welcome to the Lifting Leaders podcast.
Thank you. And it's so wonderful to be here and just even have the opportunity to share a little bit more about belonging that just might give us the answer to be okay.
Wow.
I love that.
I'm listening.
Yes. So Paul, tell us, I gave you a little bit of your bio, but tell us in your own words, tell us your story.
Oh my gosh. I'll start with the first realization. I'll say it from a touching people in an organizational standpoint of where literally setting the environment for real relational belonging. And it was a total experiment at this point. I was a high school teacher. I graduated from SPU. I had, it's the top school to come out of. You could teach anywhere in the United States from it. And if you remember the show Welcome Back, Kotter,
Yeah.
I actually ended up teaching at my old high school. And when I was prepped to start in my first full-time year, I put all my lesson plans together for the full year. It was teaching some history and stuff. They were to the T, the details. There was developmental learning, and there were active learning because nobody likes to be talked at forever. I mean, we just lose our mind. What is it? 10 minutes is what we can pay attention, and then we shift because we're scanning the horizon, the savannah for new and better places to go and things to eat and so on. But I'm like, I'm like this is all done. I'm so excited. Technically, it's there. And, everything. And it was probably the first few days. I'm sitting there, and I'm basically teaching students of people I went to high school with because I taught high school.
Wow.
Oh, wow. Oh, gosh.
That was the crazy thing. I was literally walking back Cotter. And you're going to have to be of a certain vintage to understand that. Oh, damn. I was sitting there and I realized all this technical brilliance, it didn't mean anything if they didn't know I loved them so that they could love me, and that I was theirs and they were mine. I literally went through this complete self-awareness from a real high level, not just how I did things habitually in the past. That the highest and the best lesson plans ever made will never beat a place of love and belonging between students and teachers. And so I'm like, oh, I threw away this persnickety, everything had to be systematically and proper in place, and went systematic in an approach of creating a classroom that had a core set of values where we took care of each other. And I told them, I don't care what class you came from, the moment you walk in this door, you're in a whole new world. You're in our world, and we're going to take care of each other. How is that going to play out with high school students? It turns out it was marvelous, and it was the thing they were looking for, which was a place to truly belong. And I think this is the part that gets missed. There's a lot of talk about belonging, but it's transactional belonging. It's actually just fitting in. To really belong requires a whole different model, and it's the model that our brain actually decodes and functions within. And if you set the environment that way, that's what it naturally happens. You have people that perform at very high levels because their neurochemistry and their physiology is actually geared to help the tribe do better and thrive. So I took that approach into the classroom, and I was amazed. My classes would self-manage, and I taught in a poor area here in Seattle. It's White Center. At the time, it was the lowest income per capita, highest free and reduced lunch area in the Pacific Northwest. Next goes to Northern California to Idaho. And my students would self-manage, take care of each other, correct each other, not mean in a mean way, but in a re-inviting way back into, hey, we don't do that here. And it was a massively diverse, fun classroom, beautiful, beautiful students. And I had students that were, it was funny, historically they were C and D students that became A and B students. So it played out that way.
Yeah.
And then I got lured away from teaching. That's a whole nother story. I won't go into that though right now. And became the head of technology, an IT director. But I didn't do IT as a technologist. I did it as a social scientist, which was what would it take to make people's lives easier and put them in their autonomy and get it so that their hearts would work for something instead of in fear of something. And so I did the same kind of approach with my IT teams. And that led me to go, oh, this is working here. IT compliance, instead of being threat and fear, you'd bring it into the context of, we are trying to do this so that our company tribe can do better and better. So I kept doing this approach, which led the company to get acquired, which led to, I'm getting to it here, which led to my divisions and peoples all being dismissed in the acquisition, and me choosing to explore elsewhere. And a dear friend, he invited me to become a coach, to which I flinched massively. And because it was like, oh, no, I don't want to hear that I'm a coach. So I ended up hiring a coach because I was curious. After avoiding answering the question, did I go check out the program, for 5-6 months? Scott Baker, thank you, by the way, if you get to hear this.
There you go.
Yeah, Scott Baker, he's a brilliant coach, brilliant HR professional. I love him. I went and hired a coach, and it was like, oh my goodness, that was so helpful. And in truth, what it did was give me the space to this, less similarly to the space I would give my kids, as simply a space where they could belong. And if you do it right, the person gets to self-belong. I'm not saying belong with yourself. That's too much of a mind shift, because we say that all the time, but it's glossed over. But when I say self-belong, and I'll get into this maybe a little later when we talk about the model of belonging, because I'll give you a parallel of what's screwing it up and what makes it work. But he gave me the space for me to self-belong. That meant I could be with myself with, oh crap, this is scaring me so bad. But there was no judgment. There was no fixing. It was like delabeling and relabeling. And everybody talks about taking away the labels and everything else. Yeah, but you need a new label in space, one that's from your origin, to keep going. And so then I ended up enrolling. I checked out this Seattle Coach program. And Patty, I love you. Patty Bergen is the master coach of it. And in the process, I went through it, and this is where, to an earlier question off recording, I'm 3 weeks into it, and I'm still flinching every time he says, hey, you're going to be a coach? And I'm still flinching. I'm sitting there and I'm like going, oh my God, I've been a coach my whole life. I just didn't know it. And so in this program and learning the art and the science of really creating that space, where I would call it, some people call it holding space and whatever else. I've now officially come to think of it as I'm a belonging Sherpa. And I'm creating a space where they can completely belong with themselves and with me, because it's a bi-directional thing. It's just the presence of the space. It's that's what changes our neurobiology for us to belong. But we have to give it first. And to tie that full circle to the whole teaching thing, when I realized if I simply gave that to the kids, they would find a way to learn and be excited and go the way they wanted to go. And that's how it played out. And it turns out, it kind of works out that way coaching with people too.
Yeah.
So that's my nutshell of it.
We're humans, right? Whether you're a kid or whether you're an adult, there's that need.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah. It's hardwired.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what does belonging truly mean in the context of like today's workplace? And why is that so critical for leaders to prioritize now more than ever?
Historically, that goes all the way back to like 1890, just for a mild context. We created a world with the industrial aspect applied to leadership, scientific leadership, Taylorism, and that removed the middle component, and this is where I'll call it. It gave us fear, and it gave us aspiration, the carrot and stick. I know it's flipped around, but the carrot and stick's the way we say it. But it left out belonging. And prior to that time, we spent our whole lives and our whole development, our whole evolution, or even if we want to talk about it from a creation level, we were created to belong. And that got left out of the workplace. And we keep trying to put a transactional, formulaic answer in place. My last 3 people that I've done some work with, they've all said, you're lucky if it's 10% of companies actually create real belonging. And I hate admitting that, but I think it's true. And it's because we've chosen a model that doesn't line up with our neurobiology for belonging. You two, because I did enough, in the short bit of time that I had, I did a little bit of research to realize you two have formed a wonderful space of belonging in your work on just this podcast. And that's a circle in a context where it's not about each of you going into the space, what do I get from this? It's actually, what do I give in this?
Yeah.
And I was listening to your last podcast and how when you give that to somebody, they naturally get to give that back. And a little sidebar of neuroscience on this. Paul Zak is an oxytocin scientist, neuroscientist. And he did a study, and it turns out when you give, like gratitude or something, a gift and whatever else, you end up getting 4 times the oxytocin release as the person who gets it. And the reason I bring that up is we're literally wired to give first. And to tie this to business, but we structured a business context that it's no, I will give you something after I get it. Think of a paycheck.
Yeah.
After the work, then you're gonna. It's not a give as in a choice. It's literally you're gonna get that paycheck after you work.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, you're doing a good job after you've done that job, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're making me think of oh shoot, I'm trying to remember the book. He's a conductor, she's a counselor scientist.
Ben Zander.
Yes. Oh my God.
I went to one of his
into
programs.
What's the name? Wait, what's the name of the book?
Yeah, Rosabeth. His wife's name's Rosabeth, and it was Possibilities.
Oh God, I can't believe I can't remember.
Oh, I went to his program. I can't remember. What's it called?
Okay,
I've got it.
We can get it later.
I've got it over here
You've
somewhere.
got the book?
Yeah.
I'm going to look it up.
The Art of Possibility.
Oh, that's
The Art of Possibility. Thank you so much.
Yes. We taught that also.
I know. We talk about it all the time. And yet, we can't remember. Anyway.
But it's this beautiful space of giving. Like, even if there's a mistake. Oh, isn't that wonderful? Isn't that interesting? And that's almost never heard of in the workplace. Because the measured outcome is what matters, and not the people, not the space of
Yes.
belonging. And that's where in the workplace, I think in terms of, we always have fear. And people say you get out of fear. You never get out of fear. You always have aspiration. And there's a difference that happens in belonging. In belonging, and I'll go through this first, then I'll go through the model because it might make more sense after that. I'm dyslexic, so I think in spurs and spokes.
Mm.
I'm definitely a visual thinker.
Mm-hmm.
But so in the fear side of it, you're either in fear of or fear for. And the shift happens in belonging. If I belong, then I am actually not in fear of a situation. More often than not, my direction will be in fear for, and it's a neurobiological, it's a constant that doesn't go away. It's the way things work, and I watched it play out in whatever role I was in, from being a McDonald's person to what I do now, which is work with individuals and teams and organizations. That it always played out. But aspiration also, and this is going to trigger a thing for the whole workplace world. The aspect comes into aspirations, the carrot. We always have aspirations. It's like John Medina's work in Brain Rules. Brain Rule number 12. We are, by our very neural nature, explorers.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if we didn't, we never would have learned how to walk, because that toy would have been, it's just too far away, scrambling around, landing on our chin, you name it, whatever. So in belonging, there's a shift. That aspiration goes from aspiration at the expense of to aspiration with.
Mm-hmm.
And so now there's a real shift that comes in a company space. But the problem is the workplace that it was designed, that seems to be the standard that got reinforced with like Jack Welch financial modeling and so on.
Yeah.
We don't calculate and develop the workplace for that. And that leaves us in the bottom half of fear of and aspiration at the expense of. And just the stories, and I'm kind of curious if this, now I'm actually curious, in your experience in working with groups, do you see that patterning in the people that you work with? Feel free to jump in.
Yeah, I would say, though, from experience in business myself for quite a few years, that I've worked in large organizations where the focus was really on competitiveness. And so you're talking about fear of and fear for, there was no fear for at all. It was all fear of not getting to be a little higher on the ladder than the next person. And it didn't do anything to foster any kind of belonging, because it was more important that you rise to the top no matter how you get there. And whomever doesn't make it that far, well, then they just weren't competitive, or they just didn't have what it took, And right. Unfortunately,
the words they used was they don't belong.
Right. Well, exactly. And there wasn't any outlet for, where we would find ourselves even entertaining that. You go to a retreat or something, and it was never about coming together and getting closer, although they always make it seem like that when you're going to go to a retreat. It's a team building thing. We're going to build, and yet you leave feeling like, okay, we've got these strategies we have to deliver on, and I know I need to touch base with so-and-so, but I don't really work with them. And, it was really more of an exercise in getting your next, I don't know.
Going up the next ladder. At the
if you could, going up the next rung on the ladder, if you could. And if not, what is it going to take for me to look good so that someday I can, Yeah. Interesting.
I think I've seen pockets of it, is what I would say. I wouldn't say that I've seen whole organizations, but I have seen teams where it actually does happen, where they have been able to achieve that.
I think today, that's probably true. Yeah. I think back when this organization I worked for was in the early 80s, and it was very much that way in corporations. It was all about make more money, be on stock, we want to be on the the, Dow Jones, and we want to be part of the Dow Jones Industrial Average, and, so all that kind of stuff. And it was ingrained in the business, and you saw it no matter where you went. It's pretty interesting.
It's completely what's been taught.
Yeah.
But I love that you brought up Crystal, love that you brought up the pockets.
Mm-hmm. But also, my experience was different. So I was in public sector.
Yes.
So I do think there is a lot more opportunity there for that.
And I think you're right, because she used to be my boss. And she hired me to work in public sector. And honestly, I'd say that I don't see it as much where I am now. It's there's a lot less competitiveness and a lot more camaraderie and collaborative.
Well, and it also, I was thinking about what you were saying as far as doing work on behalf of others, like in service to, and that clearly was our whole focus, right? Was about the community and making the community better and providing services to the community. So that, I think, the mission driven helped with that sense of belonging.
Right, and that's two things there. One, just think of the difference. Used to be that when we talked about government, if you had a government job, you said I'm a civil servant.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And back to labels and naming and how this makes a shift and whether it's an internal process of focus or not. The story we tell ourselves is simply the story we live, no matter what. And so that's part of the way you would craft belonging in a space. There's two things that come with that when you're at a company. There's the ways you belong plus the ways you get stuff done. And that's your culture.
Yes.
One's your organizational operating system. The other is, and what's missing is a belonging culture operating system. Because you haven't decided what the tribe looks and lives by.
Mm-hmm.
And just think about this now from the standpoint, you end up getting pockets of that because the natural inclination, because our brain is seeking belonging all the time. If we work in a space that doesn't have it, that we coalesce into sub-tribes. And basically it's Star Wars. Mm-hmm. And the perspective in Star Wars, whether you're good or bad, depends on which side of, if you're on the rebels or if you're trying to keep order because you're the Empire. And there's like, what is it? How to Win Friends and Influence People. Mm-hmm. Even the mobster thinks they're the good guy.
Mm.
Carnegie.
The truth is, what's going on is everybody is simply taking care of their own belonging. When you're working at when you're working at a place that seems to be devoid of it and is not structured even with a purpose of even coming close to belonging, what you default to is, I have to do this because I have a family.
Yes.
I have to do this because I want to make enough money to go play with my friends. Those are circles of belonging. Now, the massive disadvantage there is the brain now is functioning at work outside of belonging or unbelonged. And it's missing what happens to us in belonging. And maybe this is a good shift spot. The definition of belonging we keep getting given is a sense of belonging. And it's a mistake to that, because I'll just say it like this. Hey guys, would you work for a sense of a paycheck?
Yeah.
Yes. Nope.
Yeah, right. So,
yeah.
Wow.
I mean, would you work for a feeling of a paycheck? Because we don't describe belonging in a lived, functional way. It gets foo-fooed away as it's just a feeling, and it's not. It's a choice. And at that point, this is where I'll say the standard definition of belonging, like Cornell University it's a highly published one, is you have a sense of sense of identity, a sense of acceptance, a sense of inclusion, and you get to be authentic.
Mm.
And I can say, without a doubt, and this has never been proven wrong, I keep asking it to find out, come on, make it wrong, is can you not belong and have all four of those things? And the truth is, yeah. As a matter of fact, you can not have all four of those things and deeply belong. Because I can tell you personally, here's what I've heard. Paul, would you get your ass in the game? Because we need you on this. And if you're not going to do this, we'll find somebody else. Okay, what that means, I heard it before, and I did change my position, but because I belonged. And which was my authentic self wasn't doing good in the space.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't helping and taking care of the tribe. My identity was at risk because I was not also being part of the tribe. I was going to be unincluded in the process. And I was definitely, from a behavioral standpoint, not being accepted. Yet, very much so, somebody deeply caring says to me, Paul, please, re-invited back into the ways of the tribe.
Mm.
And so the other problem is, if you look at that model of acceptance, inclusion, identity, and authenticity, if your belonging requires that you get those four things, where's the power?
It just sounds very sterile to me. You know, the Cornell description or the Cornell definition of it is like a little too sterile. It's never that
Transactional.
easy. Yes.
It's transactional.
That's right.
And the truth is, the reason we feel that weirdness is because our brains aren't transactional.
Yes.
Our brains are relational. Like, we're sitting here and our brains are going back and forth and we're reading signals from each other.
Mm-hmm.
Audience, we can see each other, and we do this for conversational purposes so that we're just human beings sitting here talking. But we're each processing at 11 million bits per second.
Mm-hmm.
The signals are coming to and triggering mirror neural responses, which changes how we emotionally pick the new information and how we decode it and then go, oh, that means this.
Mm-hmm.
And in that process, we change neurochemically. If we're in a positive space with each other, by the way, positive can be very corrective, just like my CEO saying, Paul, please get your butt in the game.
May not have felt positive at the moment, but yeah.
yeah. May not have felt it. Well, actually, it was very humbling and like, oh, okay, yep. But
I'm going to interject with a little bit of a question.
Yeah.
What do you see are some common barriers or blind spots that prevent leaders from creating a culture of change?
Oh, they don't create belonging first.
Okay.
So that's the perfect segue into what you have to create, which is the model I propose as a feel, own, care model. If you create the space where the agreement to be in the tribe is to feel, to own, and to care for each other in successes, dreams, and failures, because no matter what happens, that's the gamut that comes into play. We are always doing a check. Is the person showing me the emotional signals, the feel? Which sometimes we can call that empathy if we want.
Mm-hmm.
I like simple language because brains basically think and process in simple language. There's the own. We have to look at each other as you're mine and I'm yours, just like I did with my students. Once that happened, now the brain has a pathway to unite and fight instead of just neutral or fight flight. The third one is care for. And care for is you have to take the action on behalf of your fellow, we'll call it company tribe mates. Because if you don't take that action, if you don't take that ownership, if you don't give the feels, belonging breaks.
Mm-hmm.
And it's instantly and it can be rebuilt. And that's where belonging is not a transactional, it's a relational model. Because I broke it, like in that one example. I was not doing the feel, own, care in the space, but I was asked to come back into it. Same thing follows into the context of those three aspects of being human and emotional is successes, dreams, and failures.
Mm-hmm.
If we don't celebrate our successes, and I can tell you how many, from a CEO standpoint, they're worried about the mistakes because they're focused on the bottom line and everything else, and that which means they're not seeing the potential aspects. Like if I would think of Ben Zander talking about what kind of brilliant symphony could you play that you can't play right now because it really does sound bad. But in that, so you have to have that space that embraces the person in their successes and their successes from the perspective of the tribe and their perspectives that the tribe has a purpose that serves. Like you were talking about crystal government, and I'm serving a certain group of people. That celebration hits all three of those aspects of belonging: self-belonging, belonging with your direct tribe, and belonging with the people that you serve. That's stacked belonging. Now, dreams, the context of dreams. It's really simple. If you're not going to care about my dreams, well, I'm going to go dream somewhere else. That's where, maybe you have a kid and you're not paying attention to your kid, and your kid wanders off and goes somewhere else. Why? Because guess what? That was way cooler to go explore that somewhere else. Mm-hmm. Or in our case, we have yellow labs. And then the last part is failures. And this goes back to that original aspect. If failures aren't part of tribal existence in your belonging, you are transactional. You are expendable. You'll be thrown out. And that wasn't the case if you grew up in a town and there was 150 people, Dunbar's number. It is a magic number. We're there. We actually are in belonging. It might be messy because belonging is always messy. But in that space, I fail all the time. As a matter of fact, I might get a big razzing for failing. I might get teased for it. And I also will get guided and mentored and helped into that. And I also might be told, hey, Paul, guess what? You're a 6'2" guy. You're not going to play center in basketball. Because guess what? I'm not tall enough to really play a center in basketball. But somebody in the tribe will tell you that. And instead of leaving you on the path, if you just work harder, if you just work harder, if you just work harder. That's not very loving. It's not very kind. So
not very satisfying either.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Yeah, right. So feel and care, successes, dreams, failures. Senior leaders, CEOs, this isn't the space that they're given. They're given a carrot and a stick. Mm-hmm. Matter of fact, they've created maybe even a company more often than not. Hey, we're going to do this, and we're going to worry about this. And what they're never developing is the core tribal space where neurobiologically will naturally fall into the space of unite and fight instead of fight flight. I like to call it Team OS because I'm a former IT guy, operating system team. And it turns out in the research that I did, and I kept trying to break what I was observing all the way back to teaching, was that, why are we generating? What is it that we're doing that generates the right levels of oxytocin and serotonin, basically sustained levels, that make Navy SEALs, that make the U.S. Women's World Cup winning soccer team? It turns out it's something we're wired with, and it's in us all the time. We're just never told to or encouraged to or given the space to create the belonging that's needed. And that belonging that's needed is self-belonging and you're belonging with others. It's really a paradox. But when you do that, you get oxytocin and serotonin. And what happens? You naturally care for people like that. Leaders don't get that. They don't even have the space.
I wonder, though, how much, I know it's going to sound weird, but if I throw in the word choice, what does that mean to you when you're talking about somebody who they just don't belong? They're still standing out there being, aspirational, but it's not getting there. So what is it? Where does choice come into that? I just had to ask that question.
Oh no, it's the first space of it.
Okay.
So if I were to ask you whether or not you belonged, I would ask this right now. Okay. Do you belong, Tricia? Do you belong with Crystal?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. And so
but connection is my superpower.
Say again. No, what was that?
Connection's my superpower, and belonging is everything to me for everyone. So it's like, it's just kind of the thing that uses my battery, I guess. But And I think that, Crystal, do you feel like you belong to me? With me?
Yes.
And for me and around me? And
Yeah.
So here's what I've done.
Choice, I think, I wonder if you're
Yeah,
getting at, is
no,
a
so
little
it's-
bit about corporate.
I am.
Like-
I'm thinking of it in a business.
Right. No. So I'm going to
prospect.
take that directly to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. I don't ask somebody if they belong, and I say, do you get these things from somebody? I said, do you feel, do you own, and do you care for Crystal in her successes, dreams, and failures?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, that's the first point of the definition of belonging. It's first half. The second point is, does she, not from her, I don't want to hear her perspective right now, but for you, does she feel, own, and care for you in your successes, dreams, and failures?
Without question.
Okay, now I'll say, you damn well you do belong. Listen, so it always is a choice to even offer that and give that.
But in
that's-
business, that's where it's the kicker, though. I mean, it's
absolutely.
Because people
Absolutely.
long for it so much, and they think that they're making the choice to move in that direction. But if they don't find that there's any avenue for it, or there's no outlet, or there's no wonderful fountain of youth or whatever, or fountain of life or belonging that exists for them there, and
Well,
they're searching
and
for
practically, they get laid off.
yes, absolutely.
So that's kind of the reality that a lot of people have lived through so many times. Is
All they're
that
searching for is that.
while they're searching for is belonging, but in reality, can an
They're in an
organization
ecos-
actually really do that?
They're
Yeah.
they're in an ecosystem where they're just waiting to be the next person thrown into the volcano for the profit gods.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
technically, there's the sacrifice. Oh God, am I next? Because there's no way that doesn't come into play, which then it screws up your oxytocin and serotonin. And I know it's kind of nerdy, but
No,
when
we
they
don't think
drop-
it's nerdy.
I think the bigger question is what's ethically, I don't know. I feel I've worked just lately. It's been a lot of my clients have been impacted by that. And so I feel if they've been a great leader and they've created maybe not a sense of belonging, they've actually created belonging, and then they have to lay their people off.
Yeah.
Oh, I have a dear friend that just went through all this.
Yeah. It's really, really, it's really tough. And how do you align with that?
Okay, I have two potential answers. The one is this. I'm gonna go back to the Star Wars idea, where you can create your rebel force, your people of belonging. Because when you're at work, no matter what's happening, your brain is working to create belonging, and if it can't find belonging, it will fit in. And fitting in is so caustic to a human being. I'm going to sound Brene Brownish on this level, but
That's good.
it
We
is-
like
We
her.
love Bernie Brown.
Yeah, good.
Most of our listeners do too.
It is the perpetual state of self-marginalization. And in that, we're just degrading our neural capacity, our brain physically, our heart physically, our gut starts degrading, and it's all a giant neural space that keeps us wonderful. Well, hopefully it keeps us wonderful, as good as it can be. So that's the one side of it. The other side, and this is what I'll do, and I'll talk with somebody, is, and I'll draw upon my favorite new study right now. Oof, I love it. The Indeed Workplace Wellbeing Study. It's a 25 million person study done by an economist out of Oxford, Deneuve, Jan Emanuel Deneuve. And they tracked and they saw that, hey, the companies that had good well-being, and you can look them up on Indeed, they checked this quad of 4 areas, and there's 11 or 13 different buckets of what actually drives the goodness of the company. Turns out the companies in the well-being track, the high ones, outperform the S&P 500. And so this is where I think that the second side of this is to go, hey, it's just freaking better for business.
Yeah, it
Get
is.
about it. Let's just get practical about it. Um, and the number one driver that was determined, and not by somebody going, I have a theory of this. This is why I was so happy. Mark Crowley, he's got a book, Lead from the Heart. He's beautiful.
Yeah, I know
I
it is.
love the guy. Um, he sends me a thing going, you have to go to my link. Go to this link and look it up. So I go and I look, and it's like the number one driver of workplace well-being, aka also then performance, because that's how the things work, was belonging. And so then I'm like going, yeah, but what are they talking about belonging? Is it this one-way model that's transactional, which is technically just fitting in, or is it real belonging? That choice. I love that you brought up choice. Thank you, because belonging is always the mutual choice, the two-way street between two people to go, I feel, own, and care for you in successes, dreams, and failures. For better, for worse, everybody's in a marriage.
Right.
Whether they want to call it a marriage or not, everybody is in one.
So, with that in mind, if our listeners walk away with just one insight from today's conversation about how to unleash their leader possibilities to create a better world through belonging, what would you want that to be?
For them to take the risk and stop being a lonely CEO. To offer belonging. And by the way, you can't do this with 5,000 people. Nobody can. But you can take the people directly in your circles and create real belonging that measures and puts you into the space of, am I feel, own, caring, however we just describe our core value. And we live by that code together to pursue at the highest levels of excellence the outcome of our company, what we really want to achieve in the world. And that's going to be unbelievably vulnerable.
That's the word. That was what I was looking for.
Yeah. Because by its very nature, belonging is dangerous. You have to be vulnerable to belong in order to be safe. Our brain, we can be perfectly safe. We can be sitting on an island. Nothing's going to happen to us. We got a boatload of food. Because we're not in belonging with the people we choose to choose us, we're dying. We're literally dying. And I would say, offer belonging, and it's going to be messy, but your teams are going to outperform everybody else at every level than they could have before. And some won't belong, because some will have to leave, because they won't choose.
This has felt like a deeper dive into belonging than what I hear in traditional, like, EDI, BJ. And it's not that they don't want to, I think, define that. It's not that they don't want to make it known or understood. They may not be approaching it in a way that makes that kind of sense, and perhaps it's just taking the deeper dive. They're there. They're at the first step. They haven't quite, taken the next deeper dive with it, but it just feels like that's different.
But they've also been given a model that doesn't promote that. Like, this will be somewhat controversial. If you think you're going to create a good space with psychological safety, you've just created an artificial governor that says, I have to be safe before I'll do something.
Mm-hmm.
And I will ask you this right
too.
now. If either one of you saw the other one in a difficult situation that might even be life-threatening, would you run to each other's assistance?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, that's because of belonging, not because of safety. And that's the whole thing, our power and our ability to perform. Hey, CEOs out there, our power to overcome, to get resilience. In other words, I'm going to dig deeper. I'm going to bounce back for you. I'm going to bounce back for myself. That's a self-belonging space. That is what comes with belonging. That's not the model. That's the AMA model. It's like Cornell University's public model that they have. That's not the model that most organizational spaces come to. Mm-hmm. It's not even where most leadership programs talk about it. I mean, how many models have you looked at where said, you need to create a psychologically safe environment?
Starting to see it more and more, actually.
Right.
But
yeah. But But that's not the space where people will go to the mat for each other. It's not where unite and fight happens. It's where pause until the light changes and I can go matters.
Yeah.
It's true.
So
I
really
think we've just barely like scratched the surface on this.
That's awesome.
It's a deep subject and a whole new way to think about belonging. So I know you've got a lot more to say on that.
we've got time.
Looking forward for you. I know you have got some plans. Speaking of dreams, what are you really excited about, and what's next for you?
The one is I got a podcast coming up, and so I was so excited when you podcast. I was, I want to talk to you. I want to hear about it. Because I decided to get off my butt and create a space where I could get people's stories of belonging and share them, and then share the science that's going on also, so that people can go, instead of this is woo-woo, it's real. You can measure your oxytocin and serotonin levels to find out and see this performance uptick and this well-being uptick. The answer to the loneliness epidemic, I think I can help with a podcast. People can then maybe listen to something and go, oh, I never realized that my belonging was in my agency also.
Yes.
If you want to talk about one of the biggest things, just knowing that you actually get to create your own belonging. That's not what people talk about. It's where do I fit?
I think
that's a big difference.
It's a great idea, and I think given the diversity of listeners out there in the world, it might be not a bad idea to, as you're bringing in belonging and agency and all of these different things that we talk about a lot, define them somehow, or find people who have different perspectives on that, and allow your listeners to drink in what they are ready to drink in. I think that's what we do a lot of. It's kind of, how do we bring across a message that is so everyday to us, but maybe might be something someone's struggling with, right? It's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Bring it. Think about like your podcast, and so as I was listening to it earlier, I was like, oh, I like this, and what it does give somebody is, so here was my morning. I'm getting up. I make my wife some stuff. I have the podcast playing as I'm listening to stuff. I make her lunch. She's done the stuff. I pet the dog. I make my own breakfast and do some stuff. I'm playing and I'm listening to it. I pause it. Then I go do some other things. I have to follow up with a client. I come back. I play. That allowed me to digest, listen, and go, ooh, oh, that's amazing. That's cool. Like I said, so the podcast has me very excited. And
when do you think you're going to be dropping that?
I'm starting recording next week.
Oh, congratulations!
Do you have a name yet?
After our talk last night, I put out the call.
Oh, good.
Do you have a name for it?
This is my problem. So I had two names, and one of them's more business relatable, and one is more personal. So the more personal one I like is It's About Fucking Time, which is FOC time, feel own care time. Elevating your life through your Team OS. And the other is Belong and Perform, which is simple, straightforward. The other thing is actually finishing my book.
Oh, very good. Well, congratulations. That sounds very exciting. Where can people find you to learn more about it and follow along?
You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on my website, heartbasedleading.com. I'm on different socials and whatever else, but primarily those would be the two paths to get to me directly.
Great. Very cool. Well, we'll be excited to hear how the podcast goes. Yes. Let us know when the book drops.
I'm happy to share any time about belonging.
Well, I'm looking forward to. I'm going to go follow you on LinkedIn, and I look forward to hearing your first podcast. It's going to be fun.
Yeah.
Thank
All right.
you.
Thanks for being on the podcast. We appreciate it.
All righty.
Thank you.
Bye.
Wow, that was really fun. It was interesting, fun, a lot of energy.
Yeah. I have to say this one challenged me a little bit because, and we sort of started to get into that a little bit in the podcast around what is the role of us as an individual in belonging, especially in the corporate world.
Yes.
And what is the role of an organization? And I feel like there's a lot more there we could unpack. So yeah, belonging, I totally understand that actually, improves engagement, improves performance, it improves the bottom line, it improves innovation, all those wonderful things. And what's the risk for each of them as we think about these things that are really good things that come together into belonging? I got to think on this one. So I'm really glad that we had Paul, have us soak on this for a little bit. Yeah. And challenge us with what is belonging and how do we create belonging and what's the neuro piece of that, getting down to just who we are as humans.
We know we like neuroscience. And so, the interesting thing, and I love what you just said, because I think that might be a deep dive later on. But to your point, I think I need a little time to process this to make sure that it sits, because this whole idea of, businesses changing, our whole world is changing around us, and belonging may take a different role as we go forward. I mean, I think it's going to be more and more important than it ever has been, and partly because we are humans on this earth, and we're starting to see a lot of things like mental well-being be a focus. And with that in mind, belonging is so critically important, in a business for success, but also for just a culture of engagement, a culture of learning. I don't know how these days, the way our world is geared, if we could do that effectively without having some sense of, and have it be conscious sense of belonging.
Yeah.
But what does that look like, right?
I think this translates really well into spaces like he started out talking about education.
Yes.
Right. And community. Like, how can we build more belonging into our communities so that we don't have all this division going on?
Well, and isn't that where all change really does start?
Yeah.
Not in your business world.
Yeah.
It starts with your family. It starts in your community. It starts in your schools. This is one of those things, though, that I think is not going to go away, thank God, and it's not going to, it's going to be around. And I want to know that it's important enough that it is being taught in a way that is not just surface. It is, what does it look like? How do you make it happen?
Yeah.
How do you inspire others to make it happen, right?
Yeah.
So,
and I think the other point that we probably could have spent more time on, and I'm left with a lot of curiosity.
Me too.
Is when you don't do belonging well, when it's sort of like fake belonging, you get fitting in, and we know that is really toxic. So being able to sort of separate that and understand what makes true belonging versus fitting in is really important.
I love that. It's a challenge, but it's a challenge that's worth taking.
Yeah.
And so I'm really glad we're talking about this, actually.
Yeah.
So let's keep that conversation going.
Yeah.
If you have questions or comments about the show, you can find us on all our social media channels at lifting_leaders. We have so many exceptional podcast episodes coming up with more fantastic guests. So be sure to subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcast or wherever you listen. If you know someone who would find this episode inspiring, share it with them. text them, email them, or take a screenshot and share it on your Instagram and tag us at lifting_leaders. If you'd like to know more about us, our guests, or the show, please go to our website at liftingleaderspodcast.com. You'll find our show notes there as well. If you're looking for help in developing your leaders or would like a growth opportunity yourself through leader coaching, please contact us through our website at www.liftingleaderspodcast.com. Thank you to Haury Chance Roberts for his technical support of our show. Finally, please take 30 seconds and follow us. It helps you because you never miss an episode, and it helps us because
you never miss an episode.
Yeah. To follow us, go to the Lifting Leaders Podcast Show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Then just tap the plus sign in the upper right-hand corner or click follow. While you're there, if you'd be willing to give us a 5-star rating and review and share the episode with a friend, we'd be so grateful. Crystal, thank you for bringing Paul to us today. That was certainly interesting, fun, delightful. I enjoyed it.
And challenging.
Yeah,
I love it.
Many thanks to you, our listeners. We so appreciate you. Find ways every day to lift each other up. Take care.
Bye.